You know, I was reading this article on Forbes, ladies and gentlemen, on Forbes.com, because, ever since Frozen came out, and even before it came out, a lot of people, a lot of critics, well, not a lot, not critics, but just groups of individuals, groups of people have been talking about mainly the controversy that the film has generated. Basically about the feminist thing, about why girls have to be pretty and all that in these films and stuff like that. And I think even there was some controversy about incense, because when you watch the movie, and especially at the end of the film, the climax, it kind of gives you, it kind of gives certain individuals, certain people the vibe of incense between the sisters, even though it's not really, it's not, even though it's not like shown in a sense that would, in a sense that you would think, oh, they show that, No, it's just, I guess in the eyes of some people, it's like an acknowledgement of incense, and it's not. It's not, in my opinion. And it's not about this or that. I think what it is that you have the characters of Eliza and Anna as two sisters who truly, deeply care about each other. And you see that right from the beginning of the film. But despite the controversy and all that, here's the question. Is an animated film like Frozen worthy of being given a PG rating? The reason I ask that is because, according to this article on Forbes.com, Frozen, according to this one individual, is anything but PG. If anything, it's more G rated. It's more G than it is PG. And they even point out a lot of things that traditional 2D animation and some 3D animation had done in the past to, animated films, Disney and non-Disney have done in the past, even with the G-rated films. So the question a lot of people have, though, is, so the question obviously this person's asking is, was it necessary to give Frozen the PG rating? Was Frozen worthy of having a PG rating, or was it more worthy of having a G rating? I'll provide a link to the article down below, but they point out other things as well. They point out other films, other animated films and stuff that have had a PG rating, have had, not a PG rating, but have had a G rating, and they've done things that normally would require the film to have a PG rating. So the question is, do animated films need to be at a certain level, storyline-wise, and maybe visually, to earn a PG rating? Do they need to be at that level? Do they need to have more than just one little incident, that would require them to have a PG rating? One of the examples that this person says is in some of the PG-13 rated films out there lately, you get a lot more violence and a lot more swearing, and you even get the use of a certain 4-letter swear word, which is the king of all swear words, used in PG-13 movies based on like novels or whatever, which is basically supposed to target pre-teens to teens. He even said there was a movie that came out that was rated PG-13, and it had a couple of F-bombs, if you will, dropped in it, a couple of F-bombs. But the audience, according to him, a majority of the audience was 8 to 16 years old. And this was for a PG-13 rated film. So the question is, does so the question is, if a film like that, which with its use of profanity, especially with the use of the big king of all swear words being used a few times, is that more worthy of having that PG-13 rating, or should it have the R rating? Just like he has, and the reason that's asked is because when you look at Frozen from his perspective, is Frozen more worthy of having a G rating than it is a PG rating? And the way I look at this, when I read this article and I thought about it, the way I look at this, Frozen does earn the PG rating in its own kind of way. And we're not talking about the rude humor and all that. We're talking about one thing that he pointed out in here. And I think you can find it here in the article, when you read the article. It's basically the thematic elements. In other words, the thematic elements. In other words, to me, it's the story itself. It's not just, what's put in the story, whether it's rude humor or action or whatever. It's the story itself. See, the story is based around Hans Christian Andersen's The Snow Queen. And the thing is, the story is presented like a Broadway musical. Probably more so than any Disney film in history, which is a good thing. Because like I said in my reviews, you can pretty much see there, I thought it was really good. Now, that aside though, the way I look at the story, the way I look at it is Frozen does earn its PG rating because of its storytelling. You see, nowadays a movie can be worthy of a G rating. I mean, Rio last year or so was given a G rating. A year or two ago was given that G rating when it should have been PG. They basically this is what he said about Rio. He said when Rio came out, that before Rio came out, that Fox had to edit it, really had to heavily edit it or something to have it earn its G rating, or else it would have gotten a PG rating. Okay, fine, it gets a PG rating, so what? Here's the deal. Rio has birds as the main characters. So, there you go. But you would think, well, wait a minute, there's certain scenes in it and all that, indications, it should be PG. And pretty much you would associate PG with it, even though it's G. You kind of get the idea. But, anyway, my point is this. Frozen's storytelling, when you go and see the movie, if you've seen the movie, you know what I'm talking about. If you've not, go and see it. Frozen's storytelling about the bond between two sisters, the love between two sisters, is definitely worthy of a PG rating, because when you watch the movie, you gotta listen to what some of the characters said, some of the situations that happen, that occur. So you got to look at it from that perspective. It's not just about the rude humor. It's not just about the action or the adventure, about the action sequences and all that, but it's more along the lines of the storytelling. The storytelling sometimes lets a movie earn its PG rating because of the elements within that story that could possibly go over the heads of younger kids, like preschoolers and kindergartners and first graders and second graders and third graders. You get what I'm saying. So, a story like Frozen, which is loosely adapted from The Snow Queen, definitely gets a PG rating because of its storytelling. It does. Same in the sense that Planes gets its PG rating because of its action sequences, its racing sequences, and all that. But also due to the fact of its storytelling. Same with both Cars movies. Same with Brave. Same with Tangled. You know, despite the action sequences and stuff like that, each and every one of them earns a PG rating due to its storytelling. Now, some animated films earn the PG rating not just because of storytelling, but because of what you hear and see visually on screen. The Shrek series is a good example. Legend, Rise of the Guardians is a good example. But so is Disney and Pixar's The Incredibles. Good story, great action sequences, thus earned its PG rating. You see, despite how you look at it, despite how you really look at it, unless the story and the action and stuff visually matches up, like with Shrek, like the Shrek series, if you will, to me, the way I look at it, if it's an anamorphic movie, when basically the main characters are animals, yeah, you'll have a few human characters and all that, but the main focus is animals at times. With a few exceptions, a majority of those anamorphic movies will probably get the G rating because of the fact that the main stars are animals. Now you might say, well, what about The Princess and the Frog? Yes, Princess and the Frog was mainly an anamorphic or animal-based movie. But let's not forget, it starts out with the characters as the main characters as human characters. And also, the storytelling, and again, there's some of the elements, some of the sequences that were used in the film, along with the storytelling, earned its PG rating. That's why it was rated PG, because of some of the scenes, the sequences, and stuff like that. Like the voodoo and stuff and all that, which was added into the story, which was put into the story, and the story itself, the overall story itself. So that's basically the entire situation there. It's just like with the Black Cauldron back in the 1980s. When the Black Cauldron came around, whether you like the film or not, whether you look at the film as the ending of Disney animations, of the first era of Disney animation or whatever, or the golden era, whatever you want to call it, when that movie came out, yes, it earned its PG rating, no doubt about it. It earned its PG rating, not just for its visual scenery and not just for its storytelling, but for its visual scenery. But you got to remember, back in the early to mid 80s, that kind of stuff in Black Cauldron would always get a PG rating. I watched Transformers the movie. Since 1986, I've watched the movie more times than I can even think of. And that movie basically changed the way animation was looked at, animated films were looked at, because story-wise, story-wise and visually, if it has a mature story to it, and it has the violence to go along with it, the action sequences, whatever, the scenes to go along with it, it's going to earn a PG rating. Now, if Black Cauldron and Transformers the movie was brought out today, they would have the PG-13 rating added to it because of some of its visuals and because of its sequences and stuff like that. It would get mainly a PG-13 rating. Maybe Black Cauldron would probably still get PG, but more so I think it would be PG-13. The point I'm trying to make in response to this article is the fact that, yeah, Frozen may seem more like a movie that's worthy of being G-rated, but when you look at the story itself sometimes allows the movie to earn its PG rating. And also, when you think of it as well, it's not just, if you want to look at it from a business sense, okay, from a story sense, from a movie sense, and a story sense, the story itself helps earn the movie its PG rating. That's what it does. The story itself, when you look at the story, the overall story, it helps earn the PG rating because of some of its elements and themes and stuff like that. But if you want to look from a PR standpoint, from a publicity standpoint, from a PR standpoint, and business standpoint, PG is a more attractive way to get people into the theaters. Yeah, I hate to say that, but it is. In Disney's eyes, sometimes PG is a more attractive way to go. Now you might say, well, that doesn't make sense because Monsters University was G. Yeah, but that's Disney and Pixar. That's Disney and Pixar. That's the Pixar division of Disney. And if the people at Pixar says, hey, we want to go G-rated, they're going to go G-rated. Even though Monsters University, you would look and think, well, some of its themes and all that could consider it PG. Yeah, it's true, it could. But the thing is, PGE is more attractive to some people, especially if you're hyping up the movie like Frozen. Especially if you've been hyping up a movie like Frozen since earlier this year as being your big blockbuster that's going to close out the year, your big holiday hit. So that's basically, from a business PR standpoint, why a movie like Frozen is given the PG rating. PG is a little bit more attractive. But the point is, that aside though, the point is, the overall story of Frozen itself, which is loosely based and adapted from The Snow Queen by Hans Christian Andersen, the story itself, when you look at the overall story itself, you take time out and look at that, definitely helps the movie earn its PG rating. Again, some of the examples I used, same way. Brave. Its overall storyline earned it a PG rating. Yeah, it had action sequences and some scary imagery and all that, but its overall storyline earned it its PG rating. It did. Same with Planes. A lot of these movies, a lot of these animated films that have gotten that PG rating have gotten it not just because of not just because of the sequences and all that and the imagery that might be shown now and then, but mostly because of its overall storytelling within the film. So that to me is why a movie like Frozen gets the PG rating. That is why a movie like Big Six is going to get a PG rating. Big Six is going to get a PG rating not just because of its storytelling, but it's also going to get a PG rating for its action sequences as well. Same thing with Wreck-It Ralph last year. Great overall story, definitely helped it earn its PG rating, but also some of its action sequences and elements within, that all helped it earn its PG rating. But again, action sequences and imagery and all that aside, the overall story usually will help at times a movie get its rating. And the Snow Queen adaptation in Frozen, which is again loosely adapted and based on Hans Christian Andersen's The Snow Queen, the overall story earned the movie its PG rating. That's what it did. So that's my response to this article. I'll provide it down below, but that's just the way I look at it. I look at the fact that you could say, oh, it's this and that kind of made it earn its PG rating. Same with Tangled. You could say, well, Tangled could have been G rated. Yeah, it could have, but again, it's the overall story that basically helped it earn its PG rating. So, again, that's all I'm going to say on it. I'll provide a link down below, but again, like I said, Frozen earned its PG rating not just because of some of the elements and humor and all that that's in it, but mainly because of its overall story. So that's all I'm going to say in response to this. I'll provide a link down below to that Forbes article so you guys can check it out yourself. But yeah, pretty much that's why I feel movies like Frozen earn its PG rating, mainly because of its overall storytelling. Let me know what you guys think. I'll talk to you later. Comments are welcome, and God bless.